What is poppin' people? You got J Bear here, bringing you all Shuckle Premier League quarterfinals draft notes, where we will be going over the results of the wild card games and walking you guys through the coach draft into the coach matchups for the quarterfinals of the Shuckle Premier League. That's right, from this week on out, there will be no more matches than the amount played today. I mean, like, that was kind of true last week too, but it didn't go down from last week. It's going to be another 4-match slate. So yeah, I ask that you all, we're almost at the end of the season. If you've enjoyed this season of predictions, please go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, comment who you think is going to be the victor. 12 teams were eligible for it last week, now 8. This is also going to act as your spoiler warning. I am going to show you who are the 4 teams who played last week who are making it on in 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, and this is the results section from the week. Lot to digest here. So just quick statistic, because Joey won, he picked his matchup. Viz won, I believe he picked his matchup as well. That's a loss. He didn't really have a say, but he was the higher seed. Liv lost. She picked Moxy. So overall, the pickers and the picked, I believe, went 2-2. So, interesting to think about, but like the top 2 picking teams also were the ones who won. So they at least got the cream of the crop matchups. But yeah, getting to dig a little bit deeper, the first match that we looked at was Pokemon versus Joe UX9, and this one ultimately went to AIM, playing around very well the belly drum Snorlax that Joe was able to set up. Terra Bug, which was pretty cool too. Just, you get to see the Terra Bug not very often, but it actually had some good application here. Obviously, the resistance to fighting for Annihilate being the big application without being, normal type, or without being, weak to Ghost, which is something that not a lot of types can say. So that makes sense, but AIM was able to prevail with the power of his Deoxys and still just setting up the bulk up with Annihilate, screens Deoxys. Ultimately, he was able to prevail in some kind of longer games, but ultimately Joe was defeated and exits here. Up next, we see Shuckle King versus Viz. And this one was another pretty solid set, but ultimately Viz was the one who came out on top, using the tried and true Viz offense. Shuckle, I think, had some good ideas for this one, namely the Sinistcha with the Terra Fairy, ultimately being able to catch Viz early on, but Viz was able to adapt and overcome with, the signature Viz offense. So ultimately, we see Viz continuing into the playoffs. Shuckle, unfortunately, heading home here for the Commissioner. It looks like in the Commissioner's War, A, Joey and Shuckle aren't playing again. They've still dodged each other, so that's funny to note. And then B, Joey was the Commissioner who made it further in the tournament. Up next, we see Mr. That's a +1 going up against Owen, and this was a action-packed fight. In the first game, Owen's lead, he was able to diagnose properly with the lead, calling out Terra turn 1. I think that's something Owen did very beautifully this set, both in game 1 and in game 3, able to call out the Terra, but Datsa still was able to capitalize quite well with the double kick Terrakion. Controversial Pokemon in OU if you know the lore, but, or not OU, sorry, even in Ubers, I could double kick the Smeargle there, but ultimately, yeah, Owen was able to beat that, and that's just like the way that the speed tiers worked out is actually pretty interesting, because was able to conceal the fact that he was Scarf Terrakion until game 3, but Owen was able to prevail with the Scale Shot Dragonite picking up 5 Scale Shot hits onto the Magmortar, which otherwise it would have left on 1, which is pretty nice for him. But his Magmar, of course, did get unlucky, missing a Will-O-Wisp, getting flinched, so it couldn't use another Will-O-Wisp. The whole 9 yards for that Magmar, but still Owen loves that thing, so we'll probably see it more in this tournament. And then our final set of the week was Liv versus Moxy. Some pretty interesting ideas here. I think the Terra Poison Assault Raging Bolt could have gone absolutely bonkers. Moxy just, with the Alolan Raichu actually surprisingly pulling out a lot of damage early in game 1. Game 2, it didn't really do anything, but always fun to see Alolan Raichu make its appearance in the playoffs. But Iron Bundle, star of the show, stealing Liv's own snow to set up Moxy's Aurora Veil, which was, I think, a crucial strategy in winning this game. Two teams kind of bulked up a little bit from that Veil, and Liv just having a very generally bulky team. But ultimately, Moxy was able to prevail. So now, where does this leave us? We have 4 teams here: Joey, Viz, Owen, and Moxy. And we have 4 pickers. The first pick is James Beck, and then we have Monte, and then we have Amal, and then we have Cybertron, who gets the scraps. So, James Beck with his first pick. Joey just ran into a rematch against Joe UX9 because he lost that one in the regular season. We're seeing the same thing again. James Beck picking Joey. Joey's running through the VGC gauntlets, but yeah, he's up against James this week. That will be the first matchup that we look at. Second pick, Monte was up. He had an interesting choice, He had been able to defeat Owen in week 8 of the regular season, but ultimately he decided to pick Moxy boosted. He didn't want to play a rematch, and he thought his matchup against Moxy was more than serviceable, which, makes sense for Monte. It's going to be a weather battle, though. We got the rain versus the snow, but Moxy doesn't really, maybe Monte, you would say, is a bit more reliant on that weather than Moxy is, but still, both teams can function outside of their respective weather, so that makes sense. And then in the third, we had Amal with the option of either Viz or Owen, and Amal ultimately decided to pick his good friend OG Albina, leaving Viz versus Cybertron, a week 8 matchup that was actually played and ultimately decided who had the bye, and it ultimately went to Cybertron, but ultimately doesn't really matter as they see themselves facing off again. But yeah, now we can go ahead and get into some matchup analysis. Our first matchup being James versus Joey. Since this matchup was played, I believe James did make a few transactions, but in the regular season, we were able to see Tatsugiri doing a lot of work, which was pretty surprising because it was a solo Tatsugiri, and I'm curious to see if James builds off of that. We also saw on Joey's side, trying to remember what he did that week. I don't exactly recall, but ultimately I remember he had some shenanigans with the Manaphy, which the Storm Drain Tatsu was able to beat out, but that was a tight 3-game set. But since then, James picked up the Screamtail, the Shaman, the Galarian Zapdos, so he has a few different options now. But something that I think is interesting from Joey is this Deoxys speed. I think it has some good offensive properties to be able to take out a lot of James's team. Last time I believe I shouted out the Annihilate. I still think that Pokemon is fantastic here as well, but I think Galarian Zapdos makes it a bit harder for that Pokemon to thrive, as well as Screamtail. I think Screamtail, just being the nuisance that it is, makes it a lot harder for Annihilate to really get going. So ultimately, I think Deoxys speed is going to be a key facilitator here, whether it be via screens or just dishing out tons of damage with, I could even see a mixed Deoxys here, getting knockoff and low kick to hit Golden Go and Tinglu, or even Shadow Ball plus Focus Blast to hit Golden Go, Screamtail, Tinglu. It's going to require a bit of setup, but I think that it just has enough natural power where Joey will be able to leverage this Deoxys for a great result. And on James's side, I will like to highlight this new acquisition of Screamtail. I think, being able to encore things, I think the fast encore here is very good into what Joey likes to do with this team. A bit a bit bulkier. He can have Trick Room on it as well, tacked on to, dissuade Joey from clicking Trick Room, as he can always reverse it. And even the stabs, just a Fairy Stab can output decent damage into Joey's team, like the Annihilate and Hydro Apple, which are key threats that you want to be able to mitigate. And like I said, I think the Encore threat is very, very solid here. So ultimately, I think Screamtail will be an X factor. I do really think that James will pull this one out. I don't see Joey winning a second time in this matchup. I think we will see James in the semifinals. Sorry, this is the quarterfinals. Up next, we have Monte versus Moxy, and this is an interesting one, folks. I think that there's a couple of different ways this could go. I think we could see anything from a full-on weather war to a very, very bulky setup fest. And I think I lean more towards the setup fest here, as I think that, King Gambit setting up Swords Dances is very plausible. I think Komodo potentially being a setup threat is very plausible. I think just Pecharunt slowing things down on Moxy's side is very viable. On Monte's side, I wanted to also highlight, in addition to Overquill, I think that the Mousehold plus Archaladon combination looks very, very strong here with just like a Terra Poison Archaladon. I think it's very, very hard to break for Moxy. Just, you know, clicking that Terra Poison button and just kind of go into town. You just have to kind of be mindful of Como. I think is probably the best way through that in Iron Bundle, but it's still not that hard, I think, to play. But another guy that I think looks really cool is the Overquill. I think just the stabs look very solid, and then you have a Terra coverage choice. I think Terra Fighting makes a lot of sense for King Gambit or something along those lines, but I think having coverage for that thing makes a lot of sense. And you can play it in the rain, or you can play like Intimidate plus Mirror Herb, I think is another very solid setup, where even if you end up intimidating and giving the King Gambit Defiant, you pack up your Mirror Herb and you're able to, you know, still go to town. And that, you know, potentially dissuades the ability to be rain like so soon. But I don't even know if Monte wants the rain here, as it seems like Pelipper is very, very easily taken advantage of. So it might be a bit interesting. I still think maybe Thundurus comes for manual rain and like slowing things down, or even like a Scarf Thundurus. I think there's a lot of different ways that Thundurus can be played here. So I think that Pokemon also looks really, really solid. And then on Moxie's side, I really like Iron Bundle. One thing that Rain lacks typically is a Freeze Dry Resist. And if you look at Monte's draft, it's practically unresisted. There's a Berserker, but like not the best Freeze Dry Resist, if I do say so myself. And kind of just folds to Hydro Pump if the rain ends up being up. So I don't know if Moxie wants Snow, because I think Iron Bundle at the rain also looks really, really good. And with a booster speed Iron Bundle, you should be faster than Basculegion in the rain. I believe Overquill gets probably pretty close if you are. If you aren't, I don't know the exact speed interactions. I want to say you are faster, because if I remember correctly, I ran a Scarf Tapu Koko for Rain Sweeper Kingdra, and Coco's 130, Kingdra's 85, Bundle's 136, Overquill's 85, so the math should math if I make sense here. So I think, yeah, this thing can even outspeed the Rain Sweepers in the rain, which is another reason why I don't even think the rain is necessarily very good. But yeah, I think Iron Bundle is a key to victory for Moxie. But give me Monte with the way that he has been playing all season and the tools that he has. I think that he ultimately will be able to take this one. In our third matchup, we see Amal versus Owen. And I think there's a lot of different things that Amal can do here. I think there's a lot of different things Owen can do here. I've kind of looked at this matchup a bit. I think Amal on his side, the Okidogi, key piece of this team. I think I did not expect it to perform as well as it has this season, but you just look at it: Stabs, Ice Punch, Protect. Absolutely crazy. You go like Drain Punch, Gunk Shot, Ice Punch, Protect. Very, very free. Delphox is the best way through that. Delphox does not appreciate Hoopa Unbound. Does not really like Indeedee. I mean, like, yes, you can in Expanding Force because of the Indeedee, but like, if you're Expanding Force and an Indeedee and a Hoopa, like, that doesn't do anything. So I think that's an interesting thing for him. I think it'll be interesting to see if Shaman Sky can set the Tailwind here. I feel like that's going to be a challenge for Amal if he wants to play a Tailwind strategy. He's actually leveraging Shaman Sky, because Ice Shard and you're popped. Even like Chien-Pao, Ice Shard plus an Ogerpon Terastallization, and then you're doubly outsped and you're just not able to get your point across. So ultimately, I think that there's a lot of different stuff that Amal can do, but I think the Tailwind mode's not going to be something that he will really have access to. So then you look at the Trick Room side of things, and I think that is probably a bit more beneficial. Obviously, like Azumarill and Scrafty are the main Trick Room annoyances, but I think that, you know, Okidogi is positioned to deal with those guys quite well. So I think I really like Okidogi here on Amal's side. And on Owen's side, I really like Chien-Pao. Like I was already saying, it kind of very much hard denies Amal from being able to get the Tailwind mode up, but it also removes Psychic Terrain with the move Ice Spinner, which allows Owen to, you know, play a little bit more loosely and not necessarily need to worry too much about Expanding Force. He also could have some manual terrains on this team, like Grassy Terrain Ogerpon, I think is possibly real. That'll be a question for another day, but like that Ogerpon also looks pretty lethal, right? You just go like Ivy Cudgels, then Headbutt, and you've got great coverage for this team. And then maybe you have like Rock Tomb to be speed control and also hit the Shaman. But I think that, yeah, I think the Chien-Pao Ogerpon is a great start for Owen to be able to absolutely crush this matchup. And I think that Owen's Cinderella story can continue here. I have him winning this one up against Amal. I think it'll be a great set. I think it'll be close. It's two good friends going at it. But I really think that Owen's Cinderella story can continue. And then our final matchup, we have Viz versus Cybertron. I looked at this one week 8. I shouted out Cybertron's versus Luna. Kind of don't necessarily agree with that much as I... Maybe it's just like a bit harder to facilitate than I think I originally gave it credit for. But I think the Masquerada actually looks crazy. This might just be singles brain talking because obviously it's very frail, but it kills everything here, man. Like, you just click like Play Rough, Sucker Punch, Knock Off. You turn, like, maybe it just needs a lot of moves, but like Knock Off is so good here, and like Sucker Punch for priority as well, and then like Play Rough for the Urshifu, and you can just run like a Sash, like Protect, and I think you're pretty golden to do a lot here. You can run like, you don't even need to target, you just be like Protean Sash, and I think you're looking pretty good. I think that my point still stands with the Ursaluna. I think that there's a lot that you can do with like screens in that route, but like Infiltrate or Dragapult might make that a little bit challenging. So I think there's a little bit more to be said with that, but I also think Spectre has like an interesting place in this matchup. I think it has to be like Terra Fairy, but Terra Fairy Spectre looks really, really good. So I think that's another very good option for Cybertron. I think he can rumble outside of Trick Room in this one. And on Visit side, I still really like this Urshifu, man. Like, just looking at what it clicks, the stabs plus an Iron Head look really good, and Urshifu Iron Crown. You know, obviously like that duo makes a lot of sense, right? And I think that in this matchup it looks really good. I like Booster Speed Iron Crown. If like a Terra Steel Tachyon can Oko Masquerada through Sash, like then you're just golden to really, really clean through this team. Keldeo becomes an issue for that combination, but you have like Dragapult, Araquanid, Hatterene, so I think Keldeo is kind of manageable here. I think that Viz has a lot of tools to win this one. Cybertron also won it last time, and I always think it's hard to win the rematch. So I will be picking Viz for this one. But yeah, that is our quarterfinals SPL broken down, picked. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to see what happens, and I'm curious to see who wins the league. So if you guys enjoy, please leave a subscription. And yeah, until next time, peace.